Welcome to the United We Scan podcast, the podcast by rural carriers for rural carriers. The views expressed in this podcast do not reflect the views or opinions of the United States Postal Service or the National Rural Letter Carriers Association. We ask that you please consult your assigned union representative for guidance in your local area. Make sure you like this podcast, share with your fellow rural carriers, and subscribe to be notified each time a new episode is uploaded. Please rate this podcast 5 stars where applicable, and leave a comment or question for us below. Thank you. Now, here are the hosts of the United We Scan podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 59. We are going to do our trial by fire question and answer tonight for those of you that have submitted questions to the three of us that are running for national office, and we are going to get to those tonight. First, we have some announcements to make, but we will start off with our normal rigmarole. How was your week, Josh?
My week wasn't too bad. Nothing that I can remember to complain about, so I guess we'll leave it at that. Weather's finally not frigid, so that's a beautiful thing.
I think your idea of frigid and my idea of frigid are completely different, but yeah.
I agree. His idea of frigid is completely different from ours.
I know.
But
your idea of frigid, of not being frigid is above freezing. I get it.
yes, 40 degrees is shorts and flip-flops weather for us.
Yeah,
But for you,
it gets above freezing and I take the window guard off the LLV, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but my week was okay. It was going pretty smoothly until I got to Friday, and we had the monthly shopper every box delivery, and I had an entire DPS tray of second run DPS. So it wasn't fully in order, but it was in clumps. So I took it over to my supervisor and went, I need 8127 time for this. And he's like, leave it here, I'll make it disappear. I'm like, sweet, okay. Went doing my thing, started pulling down, and he brings it over and goes, we got to take it today. And I said, I tell you what, you put it in order and I'll take it out and take it on the side. Well, he was standing in my case and then he gave up. He's like, I don't know your case, so I can't do it. So I ended up getting 25 minutes of 8127 time to case a full tray of mixed up DPS, took it on the side, and still got back by 4:30, which was just a little over my evaluation, but I was happy with that and got 25 minutes of 8127 time, so I can't complain too much. But other than that, that's been my week. How about you, Bill?
Oh, I'm wondering where all the packages went. When you're used to doing 200 plus scans a day and now you're doing 110 and 125, something's hinky in the system, EPS is light, flats are light, parcels are light. It's almost like they know a mini mail survey's coming, but that's just me being paranoid, and that's kept me alive to this point. Weather has settled down a bit, and looking forward to some nice 40-degree days. It's not flip-flop weather, but it's definitely not wearing a polar outfit either. So I'm just I'm looking forward to SWAC. I'm anticipating what kind of reception we get there and what we can basically feel out in regards to people's responses to our nominations for for the national office. And other than that, how was your week, Kristen?
I have to agree with you. Where did all the parcels go? I think I was under 100 for pretty much almost all week. It was really weird. I with the exceptions
I think they came to me. So we've been swimming in parcels this past week.
You had your turn, Josh.
Yes. when I'm normally getting out of the office between 10 and 10:30, and I was out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I was out anywhere between 8 after 9 and 9:45 hitting the street. Yeah, that's been yesterday I got out kind of late just because we had to go pick up the LLV from the shop because it went in to get diagnosed after the fix-it ticket I filled out back in November. They finally took it in to take a look at it. So, but the fix-it ticket for the other truck with the jump seat, that still needs to be addressed because when you push on the gas pedal and the truck's supposed to move, this one will make it feel like you're spinning tires on ice before they get grip. So I dropped that puppy down into first and second gear manually. Yeah, first and second gear are stripped. So hopefully something happens because I don't want that truck to die on me as I have 3 RCAs to train over this next month.
Hmm.
But other than that, yeah, it's been really light all week for me too, for the most part. Our one RCA who's doing really good. Finally, they gave him no help Friday and Saturday because before they were at least having the Ox wannabe carrier take large parcels, some off him for him, but they didn't do that Friday or Saturday, and he did really good. In fact, he got back shortly after I did Friday, and I was back out at the truck, and he come up and he's like, "I made it back!" At 3:15, he was thrilled. And Saturday, we were leaving about the same time, and I said, "All right, race you back. Let's see who gets back first." Just playing with him, just getting him to laugh, and he beat me back. I pulled in and walked back in the office, said, "You beat me back." He's like, "Yeah, I did." So, just having fun with the kid who's getting it. So it's other than that, my week has been. That's about it. I did get my other daughter this weekend. I haven't seen her since Christmas time, honestly. The week after Christmas is the last time I saw her. Went and picked her up Friday after work and took her back, met up with her dad this afternoon. Yeah, other than that, not much else going on. Been pretty quiet around here. James, I heard you had an announcement to make, you were saying?
We've announced that we're coming to SWAC already, but I wanted to give an announcement to everybody here to pay attention to our national leadership, because the information that we got out of SAC that our national leadership was talking about has been exactly the same things we've been talking about on this podcast. They have copied a lot of the information that we've been giving and are going to be using that as part of their campaign fodder for people to elect them. Now that we're going to be doing the Q&A here with our answers to questions that are asked here, it's probably going to be more fodder that they're going to be using. So anybody and everybody that's listening to this, please open your eyes, pay attention, because a lot of people are paying attention, and our national board has used it in SAC, and they even used points from this podcast during their last training seminar for stewards, where they trained them supposedly on the current social media policy that the National Rural Letter Carriers Association has. So pay attention to what's going on. One of the big phrases that they actually used was non-dues paying members. And that was one phrase that was never used by them before. So just pay attention to what they're saying.
That's a good point. Keep the ears perked. Keep in mind where you hear it first. Bill, you got anything to say about that?
Oh, it sounds like he's implying that they can't have an original thought. And it also sounds like that they're actually listening to us to get their own thoughts.
It's possible. I mean,
just saying,
they're using, instead of listening to the craft like they should be, they're listening to a podcast.
Because we listen to the craft?
Yeah.
We talk to the craft members.
Imagine that.
We reach out to them. They reach out to us. You know.
Just
Am I
putting it out
surprised?
By the
there.
way,
Not at all.
by the way, the post that I put on there for the host, I forgot to actually hit the send, so it's up there now. Oh God,
Ah, Dang
sorry.
technology. Dang technology.
I'm telling
Okay.
you, who knew you had to hit the send button? Oh
I've been there
God.
before. My wife will be like, "Why didn't you text me to let me know that you're on your way?" I'm like, "I did. Sit." And then right there, while I'm standing there, hit send real quick. Okay.
Well, just to reiterate, if you want Bill, don't text him, call him.
Yes,
I hear that
texting
damn,
him gets you nowhere. Trust me.
you know,
It's even difficult
you
to
know,
get a hold of him on Discord.
yeah, you ain't kidding.
You have a better chance of actually texting him than you do messaging him on Discord.
Yep.
No, but you're guaranteed
Okay.
to get him if you call him. So this I know.
Oh yeah. If the phone rings, I answer it. Okay, but when I hear those dings, dings, dings all damn day, guess what? Yeah, bite me, big boy.
I think that was one of the reasons why I got my watch, because my phone dings so much and I didn't want to look at my watch, so I just flipped my wrist up. Nope, not important. Okay. Oh yeah, I'll get to them when I stop next time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So most of the questions are for all three of you. I'm going to read the question and we'll go in order of precedence of position. So we'll go Bill, Kristen, then James for answering, unless I specifically tell you it's for one of you specifically. And then I will give the other two an opportunity if they would like to address that same question. You will have approximately 2.5 minutes for each question. That'll give you about 30 seconds to think about and compose your answer and 2 minutes to actually answer. Fair enough? And are
Can
you
I
ready?
practice my answers? I don't
You
know.
can
Let
do,
me look into it. I'll get back to you.
you can do
Wait,
whatever you would like.
Have my secretary take down your information.
your secretary has
Oh,
left the building for the day.
I get
Okay.
it.
all right, let's go.
All right. First question. Why have each of you decided to run for the specific position you're running for?
Oh, okay. For myself, Bill. I'm running for president because I'm an alpha. Okay, I don't like to follow, especially when you're following people you don't believe in and you don't have faith in, and you don't believe that they're putting the craft's interests above their own. I'm running because of the fact that I am sick and tired of seeing this craft manipulated, tortured, humiliated, and threatened without any recourse from the union, the national steward system, every day by management who doesn't even know the contract. And I'm tired of people putting their lives on the line because of the fact that management intimidates them into making bad decisions, as the aforementioned individual before the podcast started. And I don't believe there's enough people out there that have faith in the union anymore. And I want to restore that faith.
Kristen?
I am running for this position for vice president because, well, number one, labor ain't my gig. um, I am familiar with some, and we'll learn. I am always up for learning. However, vice president is second in command. They're the ones the sitting next to the president at the table. They're the backup to the president. Vice president also handles editing of the newsletter, or excuse me, the magazine. The magazine that comes out. Vice president is editor of that. I think we need some newer material. I mean, there are several instances of the seasons that is literally a cut and paste of previous articles that have been word for word that have been out in the past. I think we need to use the national magazine as a communications tool and talk about, I mean, there are some good stuff in there, don't get me wrong, but I think we can do better with it. RCA Academy is also a big one for the vice president. And we all know how I feel about RCAs in training and how much we could do better for the RCAs and newer regulars. I mean, that's also been up there too, but I think RCAs, we can train them better. We can teach them better. We can get them on board better. And I think for my personal level
30
of
seconds.
commitment, thank you, my personal level of commitment to this craft and being active from day one, I think the vice presidency at this time would suit me better to be able to do that and back up and sit next to the president.
Okay, James.
So I ran for Director of Steward Operations at the last national convention because a lot of people asked me to step up and help the craft. And throughout this past year and a half that I've been working with you guys on this podcast and being in front of carriers on social media, I have received a lot of notifications from carriers that are having issues within the steward system. And I believe that the steward system is the most important part of this craft to be able to protect it. You have your ADRs, your DRs, your area stewards, your local stewards. Those are the very first people that any craft member has in contact when it comes to the leadership of this union. They are the ambassadors for this leadership. And to have ADRs and DRs who aren't getting back to carriers, area stewards, local stewards who are using the system and abusing the system against carriers, working with management, things like that, there are spots that need to be cleaned up. Now, I'm not knocking ADRs and DRs that do a spectacular job, or local stewards or area stewards that defend carriers like crazy. But the biggest part of this is everybody has to be on the same page. And looking at the schedule that our leadership has put out for steward enhancement trainings, I don't think they're focusing on the right areas for the stewards to learn something, because we should be focusing on the important issues that are occurring today in the craft, and that is the constant hostile work environments and harassment that carriers are receiving, and then the retaliation that they are receiving after they file
30
grievances.
seconds.
So the biggest part for me would be to get everything lined up in line and every single carrier taken care of and protected from the harassment and hostile work environment that they're receiving through the steward system.
Okay. Next question. Why does one have to be present at the national convention to vote for national officers instead of voting by mail? Bill?
Well, currently our Constitution mandates that you have to be a elected delegate to the national convention and be a member in good standing to attend. and vote. It's a one person, one vote only for the delegates, which are elected by your state. In the previous couple magazines that we have received from the national board, there were forms in there to, nominate people to be delegates, and you can self-nominate. And it also has a corresponding page with the addresses that you send it to. I had seen where somebody said, "Oh no, you have to get a hold of your state secretary or treasurer." No, it's all in the national magazine, and you can nominate, self-nominate. Now, in light of that, if you have a state with 44 delegates available to attend the national convention, that does not mean you have to vote for all 44. It does not mean you have to vote for state officers or NSS officers. It is you can vote for whoever you want to, and for the people who you think specifically reflect your views in regards to the direction that this union should go.
I was gonna what Bill said was true. Yeah, it is by a delegation vote according to our constitution. I was gonna add, in order to change that would take a binding resolution or a constitutional change resolution and get it passed all the way through up the chain. Now, constitutional changes would not take effect until the following year. Am I correct on that, Bill?
Yes.
Okay. So if we were to put, let's say somebody put a resolution up for to go in with mail-in ballots for national elections, hence like the city carrier union does and the ALC does. And it did pass all the way through up at national convention. It would not take effect until 2025. Constitutional changes take one full year before they actually go into effect. But yeah, what Bill stated was true on that, and that is why we do not have mail-in elections for national officers. It is done by delegation only.
James?
I have to agree with both of them on that. And Kristen is right. You have to submit a binding resolution at your lowest level meeting that you can submit resolutions at, whether it be your county or regional meetings in your area or even your state meeting, your state
Convention.
your state convention. Thank you. So you would have to submit it then, and it would have to be approved by the delegation at your lowest level, and then move on to national where it would have to be approved. And the only way to get something like that one approved would be to elect a delegation that would support that. That's why we have been telling everybody that you need to select the delegation that you believe best supports this craft when you get your delegate ballots. Because the only way to make a significant change from the day in, day out usual that we've had for the past decade or more is to turn around and elect new delegates that aren't the same old up onto the board. So that way they can choose resolutions that support the craft, and then they take effect at the next national convention.
Okay. As the last of the hard questions, what will be the first thing that you will try and change if you are elected? Bill.
Oh Lord. Oh shit. I think the first thing I would like to change is put an automatic suspension of Rex implementation and route cuts from the get-go. We're hearing about the route adjustments coming up here, possibly March and April. Let's hope not. Let's hope they run into another boondoggle. But that would be one of the first things I would do. Next thing I would do would be, with James's help as director of steward operation, to get the NSS aligned with their responsibilities of protecting the craft. There are a lot of good local area ADR and DRs across the country. Unfortunately, there are some that are not so favorably looked upon that cast dispersion on the national steward system. And that's critical because that's the first line of defense that our craft needs to be present every day in every office. And unfortunately, it appears that that is lacking horrendously across the country. I think after that, then we started addressing the contract issues, especially Table 2 and Table 4. PTF's positions for RCAs after 2 years of service are 20-80 hours. No more of this. I've been a RCA for 8 years. No, once you make that commitment of 20-80 hours or 2 years, guess what? For PTF. Let's elevate these people into a position of profitability to maintain a lifestyle, a mortgage, a car payment, car repairs,
30 seconds.
medical bills, because right now they're basically living on the edge of poverty level. Kristen?
Oh, well, I would have to back up Bill on on some of his points there. Another thing I would do would definitely would be looking in and gearing up with the academy training, making sure that every academy has the equipment and supplies that they need. That way they're not sharing scanners. They have the cases available. Come on, people. We have all these SNDCs and PNDCs that are consolidating. They got brand new equipment. All that old equipment in these offices are getting thrown away. Why can't that be redirected to some of these academy locations that are lacking the equipment? That, I think, would be probably one of the number ones. You can't train a brand new employee, a brand new RCA, if you don't have the proper equipment. I think that would be probably one of my first things I do, is look into making sure academies had the equipment they need to succeed. James?
Oh, to go along with everything that everybody else has said, the very, very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mandate that any steward filing grievances, if they have specific language for the grievance that has already been settled, whether it be a step 4 or it be a grievance they've already filed, or it's contractual language that they're violating, we are no longer going to just settle for language, because settling for language is a cop-out. You are letting management walk over you by saying, bad boy, don't do it again. It's okay, you made a mistake. It was an error, you can fix it. No, they made the mistake. They should know the language. They should know the contract. They should know the M38. They should know every policy and procedure to handle rural carriers. This, it's not my fault, I was told to do it by the PUM, is not going to fly anymore under my stewardship as the Director of Steward Operations. Management needs to stop violating everything they can to make us act like city carriers. We are not city carriers. We don't have set office leave times. We don't have to use the load truck feature. We don't have to take DPS to the street. Settling for language is the very first thing I would get rid of for most things, and require it to be passed up the chain to national for proper language on a usable step 4. Because that is the only place where a nationally recognized language can be settled.
And if I may
Okay.
interject there, please don't
Yes.
anybody misconstrue James's comment about us not having set times. We do have established times which are flexible based on the volume of mail. But we are not
Correct.
city carriers where we're in at 8, we're out at 9:15, okay, every day. It's based on the volume of mail, and we work on an evaluated basis, which goes over a weekly period, not on a daily basis. So please don't anybody misconstrue what he said, or if you didn't understand what he meant.
Correct. I was talking about a situation in my office where we were all told that we all had to be out of the office by 10 a.m. The time on my timesheet for my average volume of mail is 10:16. And then the M38 and the PO603 say I have a 20-minute variance on that of normal mail volume. So that is my average volume that I was evaluated by Rex. So if my volume's higher than that, my time's going to be later. If my volume's lower than that, my time's going to be earlier than that, supposedly.
The next question is addressed to Kristen. Since becoming a regular, how do you perceive the future of a regular carrier job to be a job that an RCA would be willing to wait out to get for 5 or plus years?
Well, honestly, and in my short time as being a regular, I waited in that median. I mean, I know of a lot of carriers who waited a lot longer than I did, and I waited just under 9 years. I know of a lot of carriers that went regular right after 12 months. It's just, I think the waiting it out and seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, that RCAs that are committed to staying and want to do this job and enjoy doing this job and love doing this job as much as I do and the rest of my hosts here, to stay onto that. And let me tell you, only running one route, the same route a day, is number one. Getting, establishing that relationship with your customers that you have on a daily basis is just awesome. For example, I had one Saturday saying, "Are you been working 6 days a week?" I said, "Honey, I've been working 6 days a week for years, but yeah," I said, "I've been working 6 days a week since I took this route over in September and officially, regular in November." She's like, "Oh my," she was worried about me because she sees me 6 days a week. Your retirement benefits. Yes, your deductions are a lot higher. $1,100 out of my check a week, but that's towards my eventual retirement in the future. That's my pension. That's my TSP. That's my life insurance to make sure things are taken care of in the event something happens to me. That's awesome insurance. And I'm going to plug Rural Carrier Benefit Plan, making sure myself and my kids are taken care of, with health needs. And, the perks of being a regular and weighing it out, I mean, they're there. And it's, a lot of them may not see that because they're getting ran over by management and they just can't take it anymore. But honestly, once you get there, it's a totally different world in a way. Yes, you're doing the same job, but you're running that same route. You're building those relationships with your customers and you're getting yourself set up for your retirement. I'm done.
Did either of the two of you want to address that, or you're good?
The changing format of the industry in regards to traversing to parcels more than mail, we still have the responsibility of maintaining the sanctity of the mail, and we got that in the service talk the other day. And I didn't throw up, but I did hold it back because of the fact that when you see routes being left behind to deliver the parcels and not the mail, and in the mail is somebody's business check or somebody's unemployment check, or any type of money or funds that are in the mail. And I laugh is that we're the guardians of every customer's personal information, their social security statements, their credit cards, and everything else. And I try to imbibe this into the subs that I've trained, and the ones that I have trained and mentored, and I mean mentored for 3 years after they've left my route per se, is that do the job the best you can. There are shortcuts to make you faster, but there are no shortcuts to make you better. If you don't do a good job, if you don't take pride in doing that job correctly, efficiently, then this isn't a job for you. That Kristen's right. I mean, once you're a regular and you have your own route, you have a community that is now yours. You don't just deliver the mail. You look out for the kids, the dogs, the
30
elderly,
seconds.
for house fires, for car accidents, and there's such a great satisfaction. I dread going into the office, and I love going out in the street. So
Absolutely.
if you're into the service aspect of it, trust me, this is more than rewarding.
I completely agree with both Kristen and Bill on this. Becoming a
Okay.
regular at this, is the penultimate thing you can do as a rural carrier. Your customers become your friends. You get sad when you see them move or one of them passes away. You're happy to see them every day when they come out and talk to you. Some of them come out and give cookies or bring you a drink on the route on a hot day, like very cold water. That's really nice to have. Things like that. And not only are you taking care of your customers, they're watching out for you too. And it's the most rewarding experience ever. Out of any job I've had, this is the one that I love the most because of how people view the rural carriers, how they treat us, because we literally deliver a lot of the important things to their lives. Not only their mail, but we deliver their medications. We deliver their loved ones as cremated remains. They trust us with these things. And the retirement after you get done is still one of the best ones out there out of any careers that you can have, considering the union that we're behind. And the steward system can be the ultimate tool to protect us through this whole resource.
The next question is addressed to James. How is it possible to run 10 overburdened routes with 5 carriers?
It's not possible because you're talking about working carriers over 12 hours every day, and that is a violation. And they should be looking for relief carriers within the area to come help out and cover those routes. But also, we need to find a way to properly cut these routes. And I put a resolution up for a vote for them to turn around and use carriers to decide what should be cut off the route, because carriers know their routes the best and can say, if I cut off these boxes here that are close to this route and we move it over to the aux route or something like that, I can bring my route down to a 43K just based on the volume that I get. But they won't listen to us when it comes to route cuts. They want to use a computer system to figure it out and things like that. But you have the greatest resource possible in the carriers that run that route every day, who could help you figure out what to take off. And they could turn around and use the original system they were using before Rex came into effect to make those cuts happen, but they won't. They decided, we're going to use this new system, and that's the only way we're going to do that. In the meantime, we're going to do it off the backs of the carriers. These overburdened routes are literally free work for the Postal Service that management and our leadership really aren't complaining about too much.
Kristen or Bill, did you want to address it or?
Physically possible to do? Absolutely not. This is where management really needs to actually manage their offices and not just take orders from above on what to do. This is where they need to hire and retain, and with emphasis on retain, because that is the biggest thing. It is not physically possible. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of carriers right now with the MOU may volunteer, but at MOU goes away, those routes are still not going to get because you can't volunteer as a regular carrier. And good luck, because the RCAs in the area will hear about what's going on in a nearby office, and a lot of them, if they come up once, they may not do it again. They may tell their boss, I'm not available to do that. Don't send me there again. And I know that happens. And you do have some management that'll look out for their own RCAs and say, yeah, we won't send you there. But no, it is not physically possible to do that. And my heart goes out to those offices that are in those situations.
Phil,
Phil,
did you want to?
Well, there isn't any way in any reasonable time frame that you could actually accomplish delivering 10 routes with 5 people on a consistent basis. But as your newly elected president of the National Rural Letter Carriers Association, I would get with my vice president, who would help streamline the academies and the hiring process so that we're not waiting months for people to go through the system. And then I would get with my new director of steward operations and have him delegate to every office that's in this situation focused steward, whether it be local area, ADR, DR, to address the situation and to make sure that none of our carriers are being threatened, intimidated, or abused into complying with the wishes of management who haven't bothered to learn the contract. No way are you going to deliver 10 with 5, especially if the 5 don't want to help. So therefore, you're going to have to be putting, city carriers on there, CCAs. You're bringing people from outside the office, management people. Either way, it's going to end up with a shitload of grievances because of the failure of management to hire, train, and retain RCAs. And the problem of it is, in the national steward system, we have to find a way to protect these people under 90 days because they are intimidated and fearful to file any type of grievance because of the fact they're in that 90-day window.
Okay. Next question, again, is for all 3 of you. And I'm reading it as it's written. I would like to hear your proposition for the process of converting an RCA to a PTF within 2 years. I am curious, since that our rules in this craft dictate that a regular carrier is assigned to a specific route. How would you assign an RCA that has converted to career status if no route is open in the office? With the 50-mile rules still apply, and would this said employee, and in quotes, on call, and receive pay for being on call?
To begin with, I think that there's an underlier in the question regarding the regular carriers assigned a specific route. Is that supposed to be an RCA there, not a regular carrier? Because a regular carrier does have a specific route. In converting the RCA to a PTF, it'd be similar in the same situation with the CCAs in creating, the career position for them. James has come up with the formula of 20-80 hours over the period of 2 years or 2 years, whichever, comes first. In regards to that conversion, then we have to do is change the language in regarding PTFs and their assignments. The 2 to 5 routes can still be maintained, but we have to make sure that we be able to use them anywhere we need to use them, which is also in the order of consideration. If an RCA is created and into a career position, it says if there's no route open in the office, no route does not mean that they can't serve on any route. So they still can get their hours. And with that understanding, there has to be an agreement that a PTF is not going to be forced to go to an office up to 50 miles outside of their primary office. We want to make sure that that career position has the same protection as a regular carrier. So on call, I keep that form at my case. There is no on call status. If you want to be on call, then you better get 2 hours of pay every day. They tell you you're on call, document it, round date it, have them sign it. And if they don't pay you, grieve it. File,
30 seconds.
file, and smile. Kristen?
Well, see, as a difference, of an RCA to a PTF within 2 years, and yes, the craft does dictate that the regular carrier is assigned to a specific route. A PTF is not a regular carrier; it is a career level leave replacement. It's you're still a leave replacement, but you have career benefits. That is really the only difference. You're not a regular carrier. So whereas this was talking about an RCA to a PTF, you're still a leave replacement. Current contract says PTFs are assigned 2 to 5K routes. Yes, that would eventually be modified. I think if going to career leave replacements, as it has been talked many times, that that language would have to be changed, as Bill said, as opposed for the 2 to 5K routes. I mean, if you have a smaller office where you don't have that many K routes, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to talk about formula offices. We're just strictly RCA to a PTF. I think that would help retain. And like I said, with James, and like with Bill already, with James's resolution that he had go through with converting at 2080 or 2 years, whichever comes first, it is definitely doable. As opposed to going outside, the 50-mile radius, I think PTF should stay in the office. You can still send an RCA out, but I think PTF should be kept within the office. And that way they are there. If they're not covering, they're available to cover a route if needed. And for the on-call thing, I don't agree with it. I mean, everything we say, nothing. This
30
is where
seconds.
management confuses the on-call with available upon short notice. They're not the same thing. The available on short notice means somebody called in last minute, somebody broke down, they need to call you, they need you to come in to finish a route, run the route. That's not the same as being on call. If you're going to say they're going to be on call, then you need to pay them the minimum of 2 hours a day. Yeah, I agree with Bill on most of those things.
Time. James?
Okay. I have to make a small correction here because I do not agree completely with the terms used here. When I created that 2080 2-hour or 2-year resolution, my goal was to make them a career RCA. They would still be an RCA, but they would have career benefits. And the reason why I did that is because of our own union. Our current constitution and dues structure says a PTF pays the exact same amount of dues as a regular rural carrier, even if they're only working 2 routes a week. So by making them a career RCA, they continue to pay the RCA level dues, which gives them a little bit of extra cash than a PTF would have doing 2 routes a week if an RCA was doing 2 routes a week. Giving them the career benefits allows them to start earning towards retirement, allows them to put towards their retirement and things like that, and it circumvents requiring a federal law change, putting it through the legislation and getting it changed for all the back pay and things like that for carriers that are on there now. So overall, it's about keeping the dues low for me, for the carriers, so that they can have a little bit of extra funds for themselves. I understand as a union leader, I would want as many dues as possible coming in, but I also have to think about the carriers themselves and what they're going through, what they're having to deal with in their personal lives, just like every other carrier out there deals with. So I would not make them a career PTF, but just a career RCA.
30
Now,
seconds.
can I ask a question real quick in this 30 seconds? Why not look at redoing the due structure for the PTF position then?
That is an option. I believe that would require a binding resolution to make that happen.
Yes, it would. Thank you.
And just a point of indifference there. Not everybody who becomes a career RCA or a PTF is a dues paying member. And this,
Correct.
folks, this is what's nice about having myself, James, and Kristen in regards to going to the national board. We can sit there and discuss this. We're not going to be I'm the president. This is what goes on. This is not, this is the law. No, this is going to be the type of discussion that we have in regards to how this craft moves forward. And we're gonna require your input also. So we're open to anything and everything, and we'll do the best job possible to represent the majority of the craft, which is the democratic way, and it should be.
Fine.
And we'll
All right.
open up comments. We'll open up comments on Facebook too.
Bill, this one's addressed to you.
Hmm.
Do you plan to address rampant working off the clock? Do you feel it was adversely affected evaluations with Rex? In my office, it is still happening every day, be it someone grabbing DPS and mail early, casing mail, to RCAs writing extended lunches and clocking out prior to end of shift duties. I know it cannot just be my office. The union and management both are aware, but have not to corrected it. Grievance is filed, but it has not stopped. Current rep feels that it may be able to be settled by language. It was settled in past that management would monitor it. They have not.
Okay. First of all, working off the clock hurts the route. And if you're regular or you're or the sub of the record, you're hurting the route's evaluation. Anytime you're working off the clock, you're working at your own risk. Because until you are on the clock, if you become injured, it is not covered by OWCP. You're not in a paid status until you clock in. Anybody thinks that grabbing their keys and doing their PTI in the morning or grabbing their DPS or going over grabbing their parcel hamper is not working, that is all part of your time functions. Walking out to do your PTI, going over to get your hamper, all of that is a time function. So you're only hurting yourself. Case in point, I filed a grievance against management 3 years ago for people working off the clock. The grievance was settled for future penalties. And the future penalties was $100 for every carrier for every future incident. It happened 3 times. We won 3 times. They've kind of put a stop to it temporarily. Now we have a new postmaster who, for obvious reasons, is allowing some people to come in just a couple minutes early again. I'm going to have to pull the grievance out, which is still in force. It doesn't go away. And we're going to have to explain, this is what's happening again. This should not be allowed. People should not be coming back from their routes, hitting, return to DU, and then clocking out 2 minutes later. There's no way you're doing that. You're cheating yourself. You're cheating the sub. You're cheating the route. All you're
30
doing
seconds.
is helping management. And for the people who do this because they want to stay under evaluation and work their drop days, Don't worry, it'll catch up to you. Karma has a way of always finding its way to the people who deserve it, and you will get yours.
Kristen or James, would you like to address that?
I'm going to address the yes. I mean, not only with Rex, but even with the previous evaluation system that we had, it affects it. It affects your time standards when they go back and look. Why do you think we've had time standards continuously drop throughout the years each time they've redone the evaluation system? Our time standards have gotten lower. I mean, just between the two, when you had, when we lost the L routes, you had the difference between 2 minutes a box and 1.8 minutes a box, depending on whether you were in L status or not. And now we're 1.2 minutes per box per week across the board. DPS, 86 pieces per minute. That's insane. This is what happens when people are working off the clock because they're showing more productivity while when they're clocked in, even though half of that was done off the clock. Well, not necessarily half, but some of that was done off the clock. But this is why our standards keep dropping. Number 1, too, is because people are working off the clock. Stop working off the clock. Besides the fact that if you do get injured, you're not covered. I have preached that in my office time and time again. I think that should be the biggest one when it comes to working off the clock. You trip over that tub sitting there, somebody does something, you get injured, you slip, you trip, you fall, you twist, you bust an ankle, an arm, anything. You're not going to be covered under OWCP if you're not on the clock. And then look at, time standards. Big drop across the board.
I'm going to address the biggest part of this that I talked about earlier on the question asked about settling for language that we talked about. The grievance was filed and it hasn't stopped. The current rep believes that it may be able to be settled by language. It was already settled by language in the past that management would monitor it. You said management would monitor it. That means management's watching the carriers work off the clock and going, yep, they're working off the clock. That's okay for me because it helps my numbers. It keeps them out of 2080 trouble. It keeps me off the radar with the POOM, things like that. We need to be filing on this if it is happening regularly in your office, because only by getting those carriers to stop working off the clock can their evaluations be properly evaluated for their route. Because I also believe, because we don't have transparency in it, that the times it takes you to run your route is part of the Rex evaluation system under some unknown spreadsheet number in there. So I believe that's actually part of it. So until we can actually have full transparency on all those numbers, we don't know for sure. But working off the clock is not only dangerous, but it's also terrible for our contract negotiations as well. So anybody who's working off the clock now needs to stop just listening to this podcast, because you're only hurting the craft. You're benefiting management. And that's what I have to say.
Mr. Moderator, can I have another 30 seconds?
Yes, it's 42 on the clock.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen that haven't been around for the old mail count system, we screamed and cried and stamped our feet and threw fits about not getting paid for what we do. Now we have a system that is closer to paying us for what we do. Of course, the numbers have been rigged against us, but again, if you're doing it, you're to be paid for it, retrieving your hampers and don't cheat yourself. Don't cheat the route. Don't let management have the upper hand saying, well, they're under evaluation again. I guess we have to change the time standards. Well, what's the next step? 102 letters a minute? You're going to get, 1.1 seconds for a stop. You're going to get even less route coverage in regards to what the system's telling you according to the DPS, because I deliver a lot of mail that's not in the DPS, and that's got to be corrected. That's why Rex should be spelt with a W. But this system, if you don't do it according to the standards, you're going to lose. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Okay. Again, for all three of you, what would be an acceptable compromise for the abolish of Table 2 in lieu of any salary increases for these carriers? Would you advocate for or against the half-mile rule if it would help both our evaluation and our customers? How would you deal with the pay issues differently than what is currently being done?
To address the first issue in regards to the tables, I would like to see the Table 2 abolished and converted all to Table 1. As far as the half-mile rule is concerned, in my area, I don't have that problem except for like 5 addresses out in rural Iowa, Kansas, Oklahoma. Folks, if you want us to service the customer, then you have to abolish that half-mile rule, and we have to be paid for it. Okay. The acceptable compromise for the abolition of Table 2 is a conversion to Table 1 right away. Half-mile rule. If we have to go more than half a mile, then we get paid for it. And differently is being done, pay issues differently than what is currently. I don't understand that. How would you deal with the pay issues differently? Oh,
The
are you
ones that-
talking about the lack of pay?
Yes.
I believe that's what he's talking
Okay.
about.
Okay. In regards to the lack of pay, every time that the post office has this problem, they get grieved and settle for $100 minimum, plus any fees that anybody has to pay out of, or insufficient funds, delinquencies or stuff like that. I don't care. That's not our problem, folks. That's your problem. You are given a fair day's work for a fair day's wages, and you are required to pay us in a timely fashion. End the statement. Step 4, national, $100 plus fees. Next time it happens, $250 and fees until you get it right. Why do we not hear the clerks or the city carriers having this problem? What is wrong with the system? Now, we've heard the national board say before that they're operating with an antiquated system at the Postal Service. Folks, in this day and age of technology, they don't have any problems getting their reports for their scans, do they? Then they shouldn't have a problem processing our payroll.
All right.
Kristen?
Well, the second kind of a part of a question there was with the abolishment of Table 2 in lieu of any salary increases for these carriers. What about in lieu of a raise for Table 1? What would you... I still think there should be a general wage increase. I'll go ahead and take this one. I have to agree with Bill on abolishing Table 2, put everybody up on Table 1. And then, yes, still negotiate a general wage increase across the board. What that would be, I can't say at this time. I definitely should be more than the 1%, 1.3% that we've had in the past. We need to be put back up to where we have always been as one of the... Our wages, even on Table 1 in most sections anymore, are not competitive. Table 2 is, well, don't get me started on that. But, yeah, I would like to see Table 2 and Table 4 for RCAs abolished. And put everybody back on one table. Ideally. And then general wage increase across the board for everybody. And what are we going on with the half-mile rule? I do have, well, not on my particular route now, but routes that I have ran in the past up in rural northern Michigan. I do have houses that are past that half mile. It's a pain. It really is, because, they know. If you're going to service the customer, I say we do it, we get paid for it, we go and do what we got to do. If they're a mile from where their mailbox is, Why can't we go ahead and deliver their package? I get the off the line of travel, but if I'd get rid of the half-mile rule if possible. I mean, I know that is established in the 603
30
as well.
seconds.
And what else we got on here? And the pay issues. Yes, I agree with Bill on that. I know it's ridiculous, whether it's management error or it's interface error between the rural carrier pay system and tax, because why can't we just put it in tax instead of having to interface it over to tax? And then again, it goes with the antiquated systems. You would think that they would want their systems to work properly, and it doesn't. I have to agree with Bill on most stuff.
James?
So there is not an acceptable quote unquote compromise in this situation other than abolishing table 2 and table 4, moving everybody on those tables to the equal step that they would have been had they been on that table in the first place. So everybody is paid the exact same way for everybody. And wage increases by federal law have to be comparable to other similar union jobs in the private sector, which would be your big 3, UPS, FedEx, similar private company wages, so we can be competitive. And there is no compromising on that because it is law. So I would also say that the half-mile rule should be abolished, because now that we have REX and we can actually put the park point and front door walking distances in the system, there should be no reason to have a half-mile rule anymore, because we can actually measure that out and get paid for it supposedly on REX. It would go into your out of route miles and out of route feet. So it wouldn't be too hard of an issue to solve with that. And as for the pay issues, we should have had a step 4 written as soon as we found out that 55,000 carriers weren't getting paid. And that step 4 should have been put in on that Friday when the carriers did not receive any type of pay other than a 65% money order that they called in advance. It's not an advance. That is money you are owed. An advance would be, I haven't worked yet and I
30
want
seconds.
some money. So calling it an advance is a misnomer. So it should have been filed immediately. Our leadership failed to do that. And we have step 4s from 2018 that still haven't been resolved. So I don't expect this one to be done soon either.
Since there are 9 total positions, once you're elected, what will you do to drown out the majority of officers that do not hold similar views as yours? Bill?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to do anything to drown out the other voices. If you can't hear from your opposition, if you can't take criticism or a difference of opinion, then you shouldn't be in a position of leadership. You have to consider all sides. Doesn't mean you have to follow them, but you have to give due respect to listening to opposing views. And there are 9 positions. There are 7 positions that need to be changed. 2 of them actually cannot be as NROs. But the fact of the matter is, 4 positions on the national board need to be changed now, because they are of the old mindset. It's the good old boys club with girls included. They are doing nothing to represent us, promote us, educate us, or protect us. If you can't replace everybody, like I said, you have to give due respect, take their opinions given for their experience, and move forward from there. You can always agree to disagree, but you don't have to follow the crowd per se in regards to what they've done in the past, because that has not worked for us, and it won't work for us in the future. Kristen?
Along the same lines as Bill, it's not a matter of drowning it out. Yes, you're gonna listen to everybody at the table. You get 9 people around the table to talk stuff out, kind of like the 4 of us do weekly on here. You sit down, you're gonna listen to what they have to say, but at the same time, if they're saying stuff that may have pertained to 10, 15, 20 years ago, and it doesn't apply to what's going on now, that's when you have to stop and you have to say, look, this is what is going on now. What these was going on then may not apply to what's going on now. We need to come up with a solution or a way to work this out with what is going on in the present. And I think if you can get everybody to talk stuff out, again, it doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to drown them out. You're going to listen to what they have to say. But like Bill said, difference of opinions, you got to be respectful of it. But at the same time, we're looking out for the craft presently, what's going on today.
James?
I wholeheartedly agree with Bill and Kristen on this because we're there to work together to better the craft. It doesn't matter what my opinion personally is of each of these individuals. What matters is the job that we can do for the craft. And they have experience with being in the leadership positions that can guide us on some of the issues that we may not have full experience on. At the same time, they also have not had a lot of experience on the route, so they don't fully grasp the exact issues that are happening at the ground level. So we're going to have to work together to create an environment that builds up this craft better, stronger, and meaner than any other union that deals with management. Because at this point, management has proved that they're going to harass, intimidate, retaliate, and abuse the rural carriers. And it's time for our leadership to step up, protect the craft through the steward system, and fight for every single rural carrier out there. It's the only way we can get ahead and be a better craft by the end of this.
All right, Josh stepped away for a moment. He did post the next question. I'm going to go ahead and read this real quick. I'll go through with Bill first. I know one of my resolutions that I put through that actually passed at National kind of reflects on the second part of this, but I'm going to read this real quick. If the situation presented itself in the course of contract negotiations, would any of you be in favor of establishing a list of regular rural carriers that wanted to work on Sundays and other routes? I am cognizant of the fact that this would have to be done so as not to mandate any regular rural carrier to work additional hours. I also have another question in roughly the same vein. Would it be possible to push for a system that would allow regular rural carriers to transfer across state lines, similar to what the city carriers have, whereas if a route is open in an office, they can just go to that office rather than having to go through the mutual transfer process? Bill?
Okay, in the course of contract negotiations, to be in favor of establishing regular rural carriers who wanted to work on Sundays and other routes, we would have to examine the FSLA so that we don't get into a situation of 2080 and 2240 problems. And that would be based wholly on, where our director of labor operations would basically guide us in that situation, because our federal laws in that regard. So that's a very tricky area. And the other problem of it is that if you do get into that situation, aren't we afraid that the United States Postal Service would then turn around and mandate carriers to help on open routes? And none of us want that. If we want the extra money, we would like the opportunity to volunteer, but we don't want to be mandated to cover other routes. In regards to regular carriers transferring across state lines, similar to city carriers, to me, this doesn't make any sense at all. If a regular carrier has the opportunity to bid on an open route in another state or another office, okay, they should be able to. There shouldn't be a transfer, a mutual transfer situation involved here. They should be able to do that. Yes, hold them for 30 days or 60 days, whatever. But the thing of it is that either way, one office or the other is going to suffer, because of the lack of, coverage. But you still should be able to give that carrier the opportunity, because if that's what the carrier wants, you're going to have a better employee, a more satisfied employee who has gotten what they wanted in regards to moving, and you don't have to train them. So, okay, yes, you're going to have an open position from where they leave. Guess what, folks? We have enough of that right now. I mean, I know of 100 route
30
office
seconds.
that has 20 subs. Tell me how that's working out. So, in my office, we don't have 1-for-1, and that's a ill-conceived concept for yesteryear. So, yes, if you should be able to transfer without having a mutual transfer.
My turn.
I would say before you start, I just wanted this is just a quick yes or no in regards to negotiations, and I will ask each of you the same yes or no question when you wrap up. Once
Okay.
elected, during negotiations, if the post office offered 20% increase over the length of the contract in exchange for removing COLA, would you take it? You can think about it, and we'll go round robin after the three of you answer this question, or you can answer it as we go.
Well, let's address the first question, then we'll do the COLA.
Okay.
Okay.
Kristen, go.
All right. The situation, as opposed with establishing a list of regular rural carriers that wanted to work on Sundays or other routes. Right now we have the relief day work list where we can decide to choose how we get paid to work if needed to work our relief day. City carriers have an overtime desired list, which is essentially what we're talking about right here. This I think would form an overtime desired list for regular carriers. I am going to have to say I'm against that. Again, this comes back into the Fair Labor Standards Act, the FSLA rules for pay, the 2080, 2240, because we are salaried employees. We are not hourly. I personally would not want to go for that. That's my own personal opinion. I mean, this is coming off of somebody who's worked 6 days a week for the last year, for several years. I am counting down to when I actually get a relief day here in a couple weeks, fingers crossed. Yes, I know there are some that volunteer. I have volunteered since I've been regular to help out on other routes when it comes to helping new RCAs. But to actually establish a list for Sundays, I can't get on board with that personally. That's my own personal thing. Knowing management, they would abuse a rural carrier overtime desired list, to put it simple. I would not be on board with that at all. And for a regular rural carrier wanting to go across state lines, I actually submitted a resolution that went all up through national and did pass at national. That was for national bidding. Now, this resolution was to circumvent where first, as we all know, when a route gets posted to bid, it's in office first. Nobody's able to bid. Nobody bids. It goes to district. Again, if nobody bids, and then it comes back for RCAs under their 90 days. This is where mine would intersect in. Instead of posting to the outside to hire in for that position, we would then post it nationally for anybody who wanted to bid on that route at the national level. There are time dates that go along with it that are a little bit extended outside of the district postings, but I did submit a resolution just for that. And yes, I think if there is a route open
Signed.
somewhere, they should be able to do that.
James?
Okay.
Like Kristen and Bill, I am completely opposed to developing an overtime desirability list because, as they've explained, that just completely opens the door for management to use and abuse carriers at their will and discretion. And some managers would turn around and start forcing carriers to work as if they weren't on the overtime desirability list as city carriers have, because theirs allows them overtime desirability, and then they go to non overtime desirability carriers. So they would just use that same system to try and force regular carriers that don't want the overtime, don't want to volunteer, and things like that. So I would be completely opposed to that specific thing. We already have that fear because we've refreshed the MOU multiple times for volunteering, that management will try and put that in our next contract. Also, I believe that if we actually have a very good contract, that we'll actually start getting people to line up to work for the post office again. So I'm not too worried about it at this point after we see what kind of contract we get. As for the bidding outside of your state, I'm totally for that. It's kind of, in my opinion, it's kind of like a mutual transfer with an empty route in a way. Being able to bid on a route in another state is just basically a mutual transfer with an empty slot. And if your office has RCAs that can move up, great. That RCA now becomes a career regular instead of having to wait. So you get that opportunity to give them the chance to move up to be a regular. So there's a lot of benefits to that as well. Other than that, I think really the contract negotiations need to focus on the benefits for carriers in the current standards to entice more people to apply for the post office. Then we have to fix the hiring process because they're still using the hiring process of when people were lining out the doors to work here. And we need to have an efficient system to get people
20
in and
seconds.
working. So that's another thing that would have to be discussed.
Can we address two questions that are in the chat column there? Who knows what your 70K times 20% is 14K is incorrect. It would actually be more than that. It wouldn't be $84,000. It'd be closer to 89 because you'd be getting 5% over each year accrued. And as Jared says, hourly seems good to him, would make Rex irrelevant. The problem of that is that you still have a lot of people who are working under evaluation, and that would piss them off to no end. That is one of the bonuses of being in the evaluated system, is getting done before your evaluation. And I know there's a lot of people not getting done in their evaluation, and I know people who are working over their evaluation because they're on 60-hour routes. But as far as popular sentiment, the evaluated system is still the preferred system. Once you go to hourly, then you're going to be micromanaged just like the city carriers.
And I personally like getting done in 7 hours and going home. And not being held to that 8 hours a day. Going back to the question Josh asked of the COLA. COLAs are not guaranteed increases. We'll never have a negative COLA because they can't take away what we currently make. However, there could be a zero COLA. So would I be in favor of a 20% wage increase over the course of a contract instead of having a COLA? Absolutely. I absolutely would be in favor of that.
I would say keep in mind, once you write it out, you're probably not going to get it back in.
Exactly. But at the same time, like I said, COLA is not guaranteed.
Which means this past contract that's about to expire, the $5,000+ in COLA we got, which I know is not guaranteed because I've seen plenty of zero COLAs in my career. If the economy ever cycled back this way again, that would be money that we wouldn't get.
And I understand that.
Okay,
Yeah, but
James.
you got to remember 5% over a 4-year contract on $70,000 is $3,500 guaranteed.
Yes.
And then
Right.
that's now you're now making $73,500 times the next 5%, which is going to be worth $3,750. Now you're over $7,000 versus the COLA. I'll take the 20% over 4 years.
Okay. I was just, like I said, I was just curious. Okay, I have
What,
5
you're not going to hear
questions.
from me now? Just ignore me? I see how I rate.
All right, what is your answer?
I'm going to disagree with Bill and Kristen on this because we are going to have a minimum increase to our bottom line in equal distance to the ones that the UAW, UPS, and all them negotiated. The cost of living adjustments are just to help in case increases aren't enough to match inflation. So you want to have that cost of living increase still in the contract as a protection in case increases occur at an exponential rate like they have in the past few years. Granted, it hasn't been enough to match the inflation that we've had, but it's still better than nothing. And I can guarantee that if we have proper negotiations over the salary and follow the law, that we will be properly compensated as long as leadership recognizes that the law is on the books.
You're correct 100%, but based on the track history that we have, that would not be a correct assessment. Only if future management, future leadership of the National Rural Letter Carriers Association is changed, can we operate on that premise.
And I could totally see where James is coming from, and I could get on board with him if that COLA was not based off of a past pay table. If it was based off your current salary at the time that it occurs, then yes, I could get on board with retaining the COLA increases. But when you're basing it off of a pay table from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, then I would rather see the lump sum across the board.
Okay.
And just for that comment, James, you're sleeping on the floor.
No,
Okay,
he has
no
a right to
problem.
it. I can see where he's coming from on that.
Oh yeah, exactly. But the thing of it is that we have to base the information on the present history that we have available to make that determination. Okay.
Exactly.
And presently, if you go back the last 20 years of our contract, 1.5% was the greatest. Okay. If you go back with the COLAs, Josh wants to say $5,000. Well, in 2 years you can get $7,000, and in 4 years you can get $11,000 total increases. You're not getting an $11,000 increase off of COLA unless the entire economy tanks. At that point, the post office would be out of business anyway.
I have 5 questions that were submitted that Kristen sent over to me, not counting what James sent to me in a DM. Do you guys want to, looking at the time, do you guys want to keep going, or do we want to cut it here and pick up next week, or at another point in time?
We can always
I'm
do
down.
another. It doesn't matter to me. However you guys want to do it.
Matter to me.
You know,
I'll let you guys decide.
We can always do another episode and put those questions that came in today at the later one.
Okay. I am going to read, I'm going to read this one, and then when we pick back up, this will be one of the ones that we cover them, but I'm going to read this, and it's more of a comment than a question. Do you guys believe that by James giving so much incorrect information on the podcast that it will hurt your chances I listen from time to time and can name several things that he has said that were incorrect. Being forced to take LWAP if you're over 2080. Last one I listened to, he said that holiday scheduling is done by the order of consideration. It's not. He also said he told the supervisor he was entitled to overtime. We are not entitled to any overtime during Christmas. They can take you off your route anytime. You are entitled to your evaluated hours. No overtime. I'm not bashing him. I think it's great he wants to change things. However, you know they are taking notes. They will say he needs experience, and they will have proof in his own words to prove it. And then they will use it against you all of you for not correcting him when he made the statement. I support you all, just do not want to see them attack you over this.
We're going to address this one tonight.
Okay.
And
I am
James,
not
I think.
setting the clock.
Okay.
I am not going to set the clock on this one. We will do this one. We will take this one like we normally do. Talk about topics. That way, if I have 2 cents, I can put it in also.
All right. Bill, you go ahead and take the lead.
Well, first of all, anybody picks up on my snuggle buddies, I'm gonna bash you.
No
I
threats
I
now.
I really can understand, some of the comments in there, and there are oftentimes I won't correct anybody on the podcast unless I have the absolute black and white print in front of me. So I won't interrupt James and in the midst of his enthusiasm at times. And I don't want to seem like a detractor from him while we're on the podcast. But James is man enough to stand up and say, okay, I made a mistake, I misquoted, whatever, which is better than what the national board does, okay, or anybody else that I basically know in life. They won't admit when they're wrong. Will it detract from our campaigns in regards to supporting him? No, because we know that with each other, we can work as a cohesive unit to make this union better. Whether one's right, two's wrong, whatever, it doesn't matter. We will work to find the answer and come up with a solution. And anybody puts as much heart, time, and effort into this as James does, let alone Kristen, Josh, myself, and our editor. I won't mention Chris by name, but we are here to improve the entire craft, not just the national board, not the NROs, not the national steward system, the entire craft. We're doing it for everybody, not targeting any specific group. And I'll stand right next to James every day of the week. And if he makes a mistake, I'll prod him to turn around and correct himself. And he has. Unlike the national board, who has taken weeks and months to make corrections. So remember, before you cast the first stone, make sure you don't live in a glass house. James, Director of Steward Operations, I stand by you.
I'm there with Bill. I mean, we all get to where we're going and we're talking on a subject and you've got 3 different things to go off of on how something should be done or said or whatever. And sometimes we do speak off the cuff. I know I have misspoke on some things. I'll admit it. We're human. We are all human. And think, people can bring it up to me. I, turn around, hey, got a correction. James has turned around. And we don't necessarily call him out on the air. We're not going to do that. We will make a K, further looking into that, we all talk every day. People bring things up to us. Once we get it corrected, usually the very next episode or one later down the road, once we get the correction, we come back and say, hey, we have a correction we have to make. Like I said, we are all human. Every single one of us. We all make mistakes. We all misspeak. It happens. I mean, that's part of being human. So, if it's going to reflect on us, it is what it is at that point. People form their own opinions of people. But I'm still going to stand behind James, as, he has the passion. His heart is in the right place. He wants to see changes made, as we all do. And that's just a matter of saying, hey, why don't you go research it? Because I do believe it says this. Or, yeah, nope, during that time we don't do it this way. He's gone back and corrected himself on many times, as we all have. Bills has missaid something, and I've corrected him on it, or James has corrected him on it, or somebody else has come up and said, hey, that wasn't right. It should have been this way. And oops, I made a mistake. Because what? I'm human. Plain and simple. James, this is your turn. Your soapbox now.
Well, really, I'm trying to, hold back happy tears here from what you guys have said. It was really nice of you guys to say that. I really appreciate that. But all I'm really going to say is no single person has all the answers. As evidenced on this very podcast, when we are wrong, we correct ourselves. Either on the current episode, we've done it several times, or in a future episode when we actually realize we've made a mistake, or somebody actually contacts us and tells us we've made a mistake. I've made mistakes on the floor at convention, just like other people, just like every other human in the world has made mistakes. But I'm not ashamed to admit when I make a mistake, because making mistakes is the only way someone can grow and learn. And in this instance, when I make a mistake, I want somebody to tell me I made a mistake. Because if they don't tell me I've made a mistake, I'm apt to make that mistake in the future. But when somebody tells me I've made a mistake, I correct it. And I correct myself, because it's important for all of us. Because as I say at the end of this podcast all the time, we're all in this together. And not only do you guys depend on us to give you as accurate information as possible that we can, we depend on your feedback to make sure that we're doing this right. Because at the end of the day, the only people that matter to us is each and every rural carrier that is out there working this craft. Because you guys are the union, you guys are the ones that the leadership is supposed to answer to. And you should be able to have that communication line to us and to leadership to tell us what's going on and tell leadership what's going on at the bottom level. Nobody is immune from making mistakes, but only those that have the willpower can admit they made mistakes and correct those mistakes.
Thank you, James. And this is why we still stand behind you.
I just want to hug him.
All right, guys. We have it's been a long one tonight. And
Didn't
thank
Josh
you.
want to make a comment?
Did you want to comment on that,
Yeah.
Josh?
No,
Get the cat off of you. Where's my cat picture?
I've been in the garage all night, so I could actually have the laptop to be able to read these questions. And the poor thing knew it was mail time and was meowing at the door for at least the first half hour.
All right, let's get your response then.
No, I don't have, there are things that have been said, and like you guys both said, once the corrected information was given to him or he was informed of the issue of what was, his misspeaking, did say something on a future episode or later that evening if we messaged him and said, hey, while we were talking, hey, it's this, not that. And I want to say, well, it was about 6 months ago. There was two of the board members in the same month had a correction to their articles in the
Mhm.
magazine.
Yep.
Yeah, we're all human. We all make mistakes. I mean, there is a ton of information between 603 ELMs, the contract, the order of consideration,
M38.
M38s, F21s. I mean, there is so much out there that we have to go by. And so yes, things get misspoke, things get construed, things get, it happens. We're all guilty of it at one point time or another. Every single human being is guilty of it at one time point or another. It happens. So, but that doesn't mean that's going to take away for how we feel with his passion and the amount that he cares for the craft in general. And we all
And
care, that's why we're doing this.
you know, let me explain that I don't know how James does all that he does with the social media, the railroad, his work, his personal life, and everything else. But as members of your national board, we're going to be your mouthpiece. We're not going to be representing 9 opinions for the NROs and the national board itself. We're going to be representing 100,000 plus carriers. And we need your input. We need your knowledge. We need your insight. What needs to be addressed. And we're going to be open to that. We're not going to set policy because we know better. We're not going to set policy because, oh, I'm the president and what I say goes. No, it's going to be a collaborative effort. And it's going to be on your behalf, not ours.
Because we're the ones that are representing you when it comes to battling with USPS management.
Yes, we have the authority to negotiate on your behalf, but we have a greater responsibility to represent on your behalf. Responsibility is a much broader dilemma in regards to leadership. Authority, anybody with a title can say they have authority. What's the realm of your responsibility towards your employees, towards the craft, towards the union, and each person in the craft, union or not? Because remember, what they do to one of you, they do to all of us,
Yes.
dues paying or not.
So we are going to wrap this up for this evening. This is a long one, guys. I hope you appreciate it. And we will, on another future episode, we will answer the questions we didn't get to tonight. I will leave the Google Forms up for those of you that have other questions that want to ask. Please feel free to put your questions on that form. We will get to them in a future episode. We still have until August before National Convention, so we've got plenty of time to answer all your questions. So, anybody else have anything else they want to say tonight, or are we going to just go ahead and end it now?
Are we getting paid overtime on this one?
No, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought about triple time, but I don't think we can. That's quite not in the budget.
It's not a holiday either.
Yeah.
I think we should just do our closing quotes and walk away.
All right,
I don't-
go for it, James.
Well, Josh first.
Oh yeah, go for it,
Yeah.
Josh.
I'm gonna say, from what I think I've heard, the weather is actually starting to settle down a little bit across the country.
Not in
It's
California.
yes,
Or Colorado.
but do they count?
Yes, they do.
Yep,
Um,
most definitely.
but be safe out there. Be vigilant. Don't get overwhelmed. If you do, take a step back, take a deep breath, and step back in. Have a good week. We'll see you next time.
James.
Well, it's very hard to run for any office, but we have the passion, the desire, and the knowledge of a lot of things between all of us to make this happen. And the reason why we're all doing this is for the craft, because we're all in this together.
Bill.
Well, this has been fun. I enjoyed it immensely. All I can say is that to reiterate the fact that we're doing this for the craft, and you don't believe that, then why do we waste our time doing this every Sunday? Why are we on the social media platforms through the course of the week? Why are we going to conventions, promote our agenda in regards to educating, promoting, and protecting the craft? I mean, James last year, self-nominated, walked the caucus floors by himself. Plenty of votes for a first timer doing it off the cuff. And some people would be embarrassed or humiliated for that. I'll tell you what, that made me so proud that, he had the cojones to stand up to the people who have been established their positions on the national board and say, we can do better. And ladies and gentlemen, we can do better. All three of us as a force on the national board would be able to change the direction of this craft for the better. And it would start with the national steward system, and James is the head of that. It would start with Kristen getting the academies up and running and training with the proper equipment, with the proper literature, with the proper education materials, and the follow-up to make sure that these RCAs are being trained correctly in the office, that they're getting the compensation they're entitled to, that they're getting focused attention on performing their duties, not being split off to run parcels for an open route, which they can contractually do. But I digress. We're doing this for 100,000 reasons, and I'm proud of what I do for a living. And I'm not proud of who I work for. And that's a conundrum because of the fact that United States Postal Service used to be a desired job. The mail carriers used to wear ties and caps, and they were looked upon with respect. Not anymore, ladies and gentlemen. And it's time to get that respect back. And it starts with the three of us. And it starts with you as delegates attending the national convention and voting new leadership onto the national board. Can't do it without you. We couldn't do this podcast without you. So please step up, speak out, be heard, and vote. God bless you all. Be safe this coming week. The weather is settling down in most of the country. And remember, you're the most important delivery of the day. Get home to your loved ones, okay? God bless you.
Thank you, gentlemen. It has definitely been a night. I will say that. And I just to reiterate what everybody has said, don't get stressed. Cause it. File, as Bill always says. Get home safe to your loved ones. Everybody have a good week, and we will be back next Sunday night.
Are we getting paid overtime on this one?
No, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought about triple time, but I don't think we can. That's quite not in the budget.
Yeah, it's not a holiday either.
Yeah.